All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Emily Mora, and on behalf of Decoding Dyslexia North Carolina, I would like to welcome you to our workshop this evening. It is Light It Up, Strengthen Attention, Strengthen Learning. We are so blessed this evening to be joined by Lysandra Sykes, who is a speech language pathologist. She works in the school system. She also works in private practice, and as she calls herself, she is an executive function nerd. She loves, yes, all things executive function. She of course works with students regarding executive function skills. She has done writing and trainings and creating materials and obviously wonderful workshops like these. So we're so happy to have her this evening to share her knowledge with us. And feel free to put any questions in the chat as we go along. And I am going to pass things over to Lysandra. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome, everybody. Of course, I want to thank Dyslexia Decoded, North Carolina, and Emily for asking me to present tonight because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. So let's dive right in. So really quickly, just my disclosures. I am being compensated for this presentation. I'll mention, as Emily did, that I have materials that I sell on education platform, as well as my private practice, and then non-financial, I'm a member and a contributor of the Seeds of Learning community, which I will mention throughout the presentation. Um, so the learning objectives tonight, I am going to define the attention system. I'm going to talk about its role in executive functions. Then I will go over teaching attention, and finally give some additional strategies for strengthening attention. I will leave time for questions at the end, so you can add them to the chat, but there will be time for questions at the end. So a little bit about me. As she said, I'm a speech language pathologist. I've worked in a lot of different settings. I am a second degree student. So my first degree was in acting. And I like to mention that because for parents, a reminder that it can take a little while to figure out what you're going to do when you grow up. And I'm really glad I went back to school in my late 20s. I have worked, like I said, in many settings. Predominantly the last few years, I've been doing telehealth. I'm a writer, so I write articles for the Seeds of Learning community and several other things. And why we're here tonight is I am a huge executive function nerd. And I really started learning a lot about executive functions and their role in childhood development around 2021 with Tara Sumter and the Seeds of Learning community, which is a community for speech pathologists, educators, parents, on how to support and the development and growth of executive functions in children. And because I'm a speech pathologist, a huge part of learning about executive functions is learning about executive dysfunction and what that looks like. And one thing that would happen to me over and over as I was learning all of this about the executive function system is I would go, is that dysfunctional? Like, that's how I think. Which at first I was like, huh. But then that quickly became, okay, I have ADHD. um, that experience led me down the road of getting diagnosed with ADHD in my late 30s, which, fun fact, is the average age for females to be diagnosed. And that, of course, is a very short summary of a very long story. But that experience, the experience I've had with executive functions, really shifted so much about my life. And it connected a lot of puzzle pieces that I didn't realize could even connect. So since that time, I've been continuing to learn everything I can about executive functions and attention. And while attention is core for every single one of us, I've had this particular roller coaster journey with attention. And it continues to teach me so much. And it's why I love helping people of every age learn about their superpower, which is attention. So before I dive in, I want you to just think a little bit about your attention today. Where was your attention today? Where do you feel like it was strongest? Where do you feel like it was weakest? Um, how often do you think about your attention? How often do you ask yourself this question? Where's your attention? Where's my attention? And you feel free to add it to the chat if you want. Um, and the thing about attention, um, attention, on the other hand, just is life. Your experience of being alive consists of nothing other than the sum of everything to which you pay attention. And I love this quote because it sums up why attention is so important. What we pay attention to defines our life. And knowing that, with that in mind, that my guess is a lot of us have been very busy today, I want to just do a really quick breathing exercise before I ask for your attention for the next 45 minutes. So feel free to close your eyes or not, get comfortable. This will be really quick. So if you want to breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, and just relax your jaw. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out, and gently roll your shoulders up and back. Breathe in and out, and move your neck gently side to side. Breathe in and out, and feel your feet planted on the floor. Feel yourself in this room. And finally, breathe in and out, and release anything that might feel tight. So hopefully that gives us all just a moment. I always start my sessions with breathing, and I find it to be a really nice way to transition from one task to another. So, because I know there are a lot of parents here who are here now or will be watching, I wanted to find some of the issues that you might be seeing, we might see with attention. Um, the first thing, we start looking for joint attention around 9 months. So we're looking for attention skills in babies. And we continue to be looking for attention as kids get older. The way that kids learn language, toddlers and young children learn language, is a lot about attending to their environment. Early language acquisition is largely built on a child's ability to attend to the world and the people in it. When we talk about being school ready as kids are getting older into that school age, often what really the foundational skill is how long and how well can a child focus their attention. Social skills are another huge area that require attention. Paying attention to other people in general, paying attention to conversations, being able to read nonverbal cues, taking perspective. All of this requires focus and sustained attention. The same thing with emotional awareness, understanding your emotions, being able to attend to your emotions in the moment, attend to the body signals that are sent during emotions. Um, all of this requires you to pay attention. As kids are getting older, one of the things that we ask them a lot is to tolerate discomfort, because the ability to learn is directly connected to your ability to tolerate discomfort, confusion, and the unknown. Learning means you don't know. So, kids who have low frustration tolerance, that really can impact learning and impart, again, that connection with emotion of struggling to attend to your emotions in the moment, and also struggling to pay attention to what happens when you're dysregulated. And then as kids are getting older and we're looking at high school and college, setting goals and requires attention. Being able to set a goal for yourself, know how to meet it, be more independent. All of this requires meta awareness, which is a fancy way of saying paying attention to your attention. So, what is attention? It is the um, it is the door to your life. It is the only thing that you experience, that any of us experience, is what we pay attention to. It is your superpower. Like I said, it defines your life. It controls what you remember, what you don't remember, what you experience, what you notice, what you don't notice. And um, for teaching it to kids, the first thing that, if you remember, three things from this presentation, the first thing is that attentions are where your thoughts are pointing. This is how I explain it to kids. And throughout this presentation, you can think of attention as just where your thoughts are pointing. So let's go into a little bit more detail about the attention system. Again, attention can be internal. So that is really like your thoughts, your feelings, if you're mind wandering, interoception, which is understanding what's happening in your body, if you're if being able to read your body cues like hunger or tired. And then of course there's external, which is all about the external world. Um, so the world around you, your environment, sound, the sensory input can really affect certain people, screens, books, any of that. The reason I highlight this is attention can be focused, engaged, and pulled by both internal distractions and external distractions. And internal attention sometimes is easier to forget about because it can be invisible, but all of the attention systems I'll be talking about, we have that both internally and externally. And remember, it's not something a child cannot control if they're being internally distracted, if they aren't aware that it's happening. The second thing from this presentation that I want you to remember is your attention is like a flashlight. It can only point in one direction at a time. This is probably the biggest concept of the night, but this concept makes such a huge difference for kids because kids think, oh, I can listen to you telling me about my homework and I can play this video game at the same time. But that's not true for anyone, that child or anyone, because attention is a singular process. It can point to one place at a time. And I want to go over the three kind of bigger parts of attention, the three main systems. This is based on the work of Dr. Amishi Jha, who is linked in the handout. And she is the Director of Contemplative Neuroscience for the Mindfulness Research and Practice Initiative at the University of Miami. I can't recommend her book enough. And while this is a lot based on her research, this is something that has been found by many people who, again, linked in the handout, people like Russell Barkley, George McCloskey, Barbara Oakley. But our attention system has three main parts: the flashlight, the floodlight, and the brain boss. So the first one, the floodlight, is really the attention of right now, right? As you can see, it's known as the alerting system. This is your wide attention. It's very broad. Important to note, this is the attention that children are born with. This attention is that open and ready for action. So when I think, I'll give you a quick story of last summer. I am sitting on my porch writing, and so I'm kind of, focused on my writing. In the moment, I look up, and all of a sudden, I see a skunk sitting not that far from me. Okay, so immediately my attention is not on the writing anymore. Immediately my attention, again, is alert. I am in the present moment. I am not focused on one task. I am scanning the environment. I'm thinking about what I know about skunks. I'm wondering if I can get inside. So that's the kind of attention that the floodlight is, this wide open, in the moment attention. In contrast, the second form of attention is our flashlight attention. And this is really the attention that's based on content. So this is that more focused attention. And often when we're thinking about attention, I think this is what a lot of people think of as attention. it is, again, this, as opposed to being the alerting system, this is known as your orienting system. It's narrow, and and again, the floodlight is what we're born with. The flashlight is what kids develop over time. And they start around age 3 or 4, but they're not born with this. And often this is what we are wanting to support in kids. Um, because not only does this is the kind of attention we're using for so many tasks, reading and listening to your teacher and listening to a conversation, making a snack, any kind of task requires this focused attention. And a big part of having this skill is being able to focus in on content, on something, and block out the things that could distract you. Um, think of this as that spotlight where whatever you're focused on is highlighted and everything else around you is really dimmed. And then the third form of attention is our brain boss. Now, this is really what when we talk about executive functions, this is kind of our quote third attention. So, and this is an attention that develops again over time, but it's really the role of this brain boss is checking to see if our actions are aligned with our goals. Um, and I think of it, there's a lot of different metaphors people use. For some reason in my head, I think of it like a ship captain. So the ship captain doesn't necessarily have one job. Its job is to make sure that everything is working. It's making sure that all the crew members are doing what they're doing. It's paying attention to the weather. It's paying attention to all the different moving parts. And the thing is, a good captain, just like a good brain boss, good executive functions, make it look easy, like literally smooth sailing. But you can immediately notice a bad ship captain, and you can immediately notice when there are issues within this system. So when we talk about executive function, let's look at these types of attention and kind of where they're fitting into this executive function system. Um, so the attention that we'll be focusing really on tonight is that flashlight attention, that kind of that focused attention, and that is what we think of as one of our 3 foundational skills. So again, overall executive functions are the ability to self-direct to a future goal. This system regulates our emotions, our actions, our thoughts, and perceptions. So it's a pretty important, it's a system that determines a lot. Um, and these bottom 3 skills are really known as our foundational skills: attention, working memory, and inhibition. So all these skills, which are actually a bunch of skill clusters, are of course important, but they're all built on these foundational skills. Nothing is strengthened or built without attention. And often I will see people targeting some of these higher level skills. They're targeting what they might be seeing in the classroom or what they feel like is an issue. And often the child is still really, really not fully developed and struggling in some of these base areas. So attention, of course, is focusing on your flashlight. Inhibition in this context is really the ability to pause between an impulse and an action, being able to inhibit your behavior. And then working memory is, of course, what's going to help us pay attention to whatever our working memory is going to help us remember to whatever we're paying attention to. And what we pay attention to is what we remember, and what we remember will influence what we pay attention to, and therefore what we remember, right? So working memory and attention are really, really, really closely linked. I think of them as like best friends, they're peanut butter and jelly. Weaknesses and strengths in one is going to directly impact the other. Um, and we can only learn, process, store, and remember and retrieve what we are paying attention to. So if I can look at a book, if I am not paying attention to the words, if I'm not creating pictures in my mind of what these words mean, then it doesn't go in. I'm not going to attend to it and I'm not going to remember it. If a kid in class is sitting and facing the teacher and nodding, but their attention isn't on their teacher, they could be sitting in a tree outside. For all they're going to retain that information. And working memory, just kind of a very quick summary, is if you think of attention like a flashlight, working memory is like a whiteboard. Again, this comes from Dr. Jaw, who is a boss at Metaphors. But she calls it, she talks about it like the whiteboard. And the reason that's important to remember is that working memory, just like attention, can be very fragile. It's easy to just wipe that whiteboard off, especially if you're constantly moving your attention around. So if you're trying to hold something in your working memory and then your attention gets pulled, it's wiped off. Which is why these two kind of are both separate skills and also are constantly interacting with each other. But the worse your attention is, the worse that your memory is going to be. So, what's the good news about attention? First, attention is powerful. As I have said, it is your superpower. It determines everything, including your working memory, which means it's your child's superpower as well. Attention is fragile. Um, uh, Try meditating for 1 minute then you won't need a reminder about how fragile our attention can be. And the best part is attention is trainable. This is something that we can strengthen and work on with kids because we want cute little strong brains. Yay! So you always have 100% of your attention. Attention always goes somewhere. So the question becomes where? Attention doesn't disappear, right? I often hear different people in my profession and in school saying, "This kid can't pay attention. They can't pay attention at all." But their attention isn't disappearing anywhere. The bigger issue is that a child isn't paying attention to where we want them to. And there's this kind of invisible place that a lot of tension can go. Because when we say a kid won't, doesn't, can't pay attention, again, that's not true. It's often that they're not pointing their attention where we want it. So where does this attention go? Where does the attention go? Now, of course, there are lots of different places that can pull attention, but one of the kind of invisible ones is this mind wandering. And for me, I just think of it as your mind is going on a little adventure, which it likes to do a lot of the time. All brains mind wander. They did studies where they paid people to not mind wander, and you couldn't. Our brains are going to wander. That is how they are designed, right? And so and not just that they wander, but there have been multiple studies. Again, Killingsworth and Gilbert is one, but there are several studies that show that typical adults are spending 50% of their life mind wandering. So that means 50% of the time we are missing our life. We are not where our feet are. And that is why awareness is the most important thing that we can work on with kids, because your attention is going to wander. Every single human here, every child, this is going to happen. Can be this kind of invisible place that attention goes. And the thing is, spontaneous thought, quickly want to clarify, spontaneous thought is wonderful. Um, as long as you're aware it's happening. So, spontaneous thought is kind of the overarching category where mind wandering lives. And then daydreaming is kind of its counterpart. So, mind wandering is not on purpose, you're not aware that it's happening. Daydreaming is what we kind of think of as like, oh, I'm just gonna let my brain kind of wander for a bit. Um, both of these are part of the default mode network, and, the reason it's called the default mode is it's thought to be where our brains default to when not engaged in a task. So our brains don't default to focused attention. Our brains default to this spontaneous thought place. Um, and as you can see, their mind wandering is invisible. It's not happening with conscious. It's not a choice. You don't often know it's happening. And in the literature, they're called TUTs, task unrelated thoughts, which I just think is really cute because sometimes I'll go like, tut tut. What are you doing, little mind? Whereas daydreaming is on purpose. I daydream all the time, like when I'm walking. And the thing is, daydreamer, just letting your brain kind of go where it wants on purpose is wonderful for creativity, problem solving. It's generative, it's recharging. Um, but mind wandering, the reason that we want to be aware of mind wandering, that it will happen, and that it's done without conscious choice, is it's directing our attention and our working memory inside. So you cannot pay attention to any external information. Child is sitting there and their mind is wandering and they don't know what's happening, then they can't direct their attention to their parent or their teacher or their friend. Okay. And the costs of mind wandering are in some ways probably fairly obvious. It's obviously not going to help with learning. The first thing is perceptual decoupling, which essentially is just being not that your brain is not where your feet are. So you're in a room, but your brain is thinking about Taco Bell, which, we've all been there. um, I think of it like your flashlight is on your internal world. Your flashlight is turned inwards, which means it can't be turning outwards, which of course is going to increase mistakes. As Dr. Joss about stressful things, but also, um, kids, when they're not aware this is happening, they may be coming in and out of attention and then feel guilty that they don't know what they're supposed to do. They might feel lost. There's kind of a re-entry cost when you are going back and forth with your attention. And sometimes if kids are going in and out of paying attention, um, they sometimes don't even know what to ask for. They might not even know what to ask for or how to ask for help because they're not quite sure what's just happened the last 30 minutes. So, what do we do about it, right? Um, Awareness is the most important thing. That's a third thing to remember. Where your thoughts are pointing, attention is like a flashlight, and awareness is the most important thing when we are working on attention. This is the muscle that you build. Awareness is what makes your attention strong because strengthening awareness is what strengthens attention. And we want to build awareness from a place of like noticing and compassion over judgment because everybody's going to have mixed attention. So where is my attention easier? Where is it harder? Where does my attention get stuck? Um, you know, Often we think about a lack of attention or they can't pay attention long enough. But hyper focus can be the other side of attention where your attention gets stuck for too long. So, kids say, "Oh, I'm going to play video games for 20 minutes and then I'm going to start my homework." Cut to 4 hours later, and their attention wasn't a hyper focus, right? We also awareness, we can build awareness around emotions and how those affect attention because they are always going to affect our attention. And then again, we can build awareness around mind wandering. One, by making sure kids understand this is going to happen. This isn't something bad you're doing. This is something our brains are designed to do. Um, and then also emphasizing that strong attention is not the ability to focus uninterrupted. Like strong attention does, when we talk about strong attention skills in kids and adults, we're not talking about the ability to stay on task indefinitely. Strong attention comes from the ability to notice when the mind has wandered off or the attention has been pulled and being able to redirect it back to the task at hand. Because what we're really trying to do is build meta awareness. Meta awareness is ability to take note and monitor your current contents or processes of your conscious experience, essentially paying attention to your attention. Um, because kids and adults, but kids are unaware that they are unaware. We all are. We can't be aware of what we're unaware of. So when we go to teach it, we want to first give concrete definitions. We want to define attention. And there are a lot of different things, there are a lot of different details we can go through with attention. But overall, the key points for you all tonight is that attention are where your thoughts are pointing, and that attention is like a flashlight. It can only point in one direction at a time. These pictures are from the boom cards that I sell that teach attention. I often define thoughts, again, very concretely. They're the pictures we see in our brains. They're the words that we think and say, or that we think before we say them. And I have now used this. I've taught a lot of kids about attention. The first thing I always ask is, can you tell me, like, have you ever been told to pay attention? Pretty much all of them say yes. What does that mean? And it's very rare a kid can tell me what it means. And what I found really interesting is it's often framed as a negative. It's often like, well, you need to. I better. You better. You should. It's like paying attention means you better pay attention. And what we want to do is define attention really concretely in a way that's not good or bad. It's a fact. This is what attention is. Because then kids understand what it means when they're asked to pay attention, and they can start to build that awareness that they can control their attention. The next thing we want to do is make it concrete. Um, the more abstract something is, the more difficult it is to learn. And a lot of these tips I would say are kind of true for any skill. So I put apple. I can teach what an apple is. We can hold an apple, we can eat an apple, we can smell an apple, we can look at apple trees, we can draw an apple. There are so many different touch points to teach apple. That's going to be a much easier concept for me to teach than the word transportation, right? So when things are abstract, we want to get them as concrete as possible for kids. Um, using an actual flashlight to teach attention. You can see this the card right here is literally just an index card that I will show and hold up as a way to ask kids, where is your attention? Thinking about it. Using books, which I have linked in the handout. Be Where Your Feet Are is a really wonderful book on mind wandering. And this flashlight book is adorable. You can also, I know multiple SLPs who've made little attention flashlights with toilet paper rolls. Again, using the senses, so making crafts. Also, once I've taught it, I often will literally just like hold up. I'm like pretending like I hold a flashlight. And I do this all the time when I say, where's your attention? Or if a kid's having a hard day, I'll go, oh, is your attention all over the place? I think your flashlight's going like this today. When we talk about breathing, I'll go, and some kids, shockingly, not everyone is a huge fan of mindful breathing. But often I'll say, you know what, kids, or you know what, friends, we are taking our flashlight and we're pointing it inside. We're pointing it at our bodies. And just those simple things, so many other, like, over half of the kids that I'll do will automatically go, when I say, "Where's your attention?" Now that so many of them are like, "Oh, it's right here, Miss L." Like they pick up their little imaginary flashlight. But that's a wonderful thing that they're making it more concrete. They're knowing that their attention means their thoughts in their brain. You can play attention tag, which essentially would be flashlight tag, but using that language of teaching the concept. When you find a kid with your flashlight, go, "Oh my gosh, you found them with your attention flashlight! Amazing!" And this all of these like crafts and books and everything I have linked in the handout. Reflexive questions are one of my absolute favorite things to use. So instead of telling kids, pay attention to me and you should be paying attention, reflexive questions are a really, really wonderful thing to prompt introspection and critical thinking. As opposed to telling kids what to do, it invites them into the learning process. It helps make it collaborative. Um, and the most important thing for reflexive questions is we have to ask these with curiosity. It can't be, "Hey, where's your attention?" It's genuinely, "Where's your attention?" I had a kid just last week where I asked, "Where's your attention?" He goes, "Oh, sorry." And even that reaction to me is always interesting because kids, and I'll say, "Hey, I was genuinely asking. When I ask, 'Where's your attention?' I really want to know. Where was your attention?" And he was like, "Oh my God, I have to go to the bathroom." That was really important information for me. And if I had just said, "Pay attention," I might have gotten that whole session might have been different. So we want to ask it with curiosity. I've put some here on some examples for attention. Where are your thoughts right now? Where's your flashlight? Where should your thoughts be right now? Again, I always like to put that right now. I'm not telling kids where their thoughts should be all the time. It's right now we're working on our sounds or sentences. Is your flashlight tired today? Again, building that awareness. Is that important right now? And as you can see, Tara Sumter is the person that really taught me a lot about using reflexive questions. Though when we think back, like historically, Socrates was, I think, first saying the unexamined life is not worth living. So the idea of using questions to build education, for education, is not a new idea. And again, there is a link. Tara Sumter is under executive functions, and you can find out a lot more about these from the handout. But these are things I use all the time. We want to expect variability. So some kids get this 1 or 2 lessons. Some kids take weeks. Some kids take months. Often concepts, especially ones that are abstract, they get clearer over time. And so I say this, do not worry about making it perfect, explaining it perfect, having all the right exact language. It's more about building it over time, using these reflexive questions, talking about attention like a physical thing you can control. Um, it's gonna be activity specific. So sometimes the kids will be working on something they love and they can hold their flashlight for a really long time. Other times we're working on something they hate or that's really difficult for them, and it's going to vary. And that's where we ask those questions and build that awareness. Man, you can draw for hours, but when we did our math, 10 minutes was about the most you could do before we needed a break. Um, there are, of course, attention, like I said, is going to be linked to emotions. I unfortunately don't have 4 hours to go into a very long talk about emotions, which I could do. But I have linked some awesome resources in the handout in building those emotional skills and emotional awareness. And we have to find what works. So sometimes kids need more breaks built in. Sometimes kids need more transition times built in, or more times again for spontaneous thought. Don't forget about humor. I am, if there's one way to describe me, I would say a professional silly goose. And I can't say enough about how valuable that is. Um, uh, it does not have to be serious. Humor is one of the single most effective ways to teach. And then, of course, sleep, noticing how sleep affects your attention. All of this stuff can help with teaching what works and what doesn't. And we want to praise awareness. Every time a child notices that their attention is a concrete thing that they can control, they are building a muscle. Every time a child notices their attention has wandered off and they bring it back to the present, they're doing a brain push-up. And so we want to praise that. When I ask, "Hey, where's your attention?" and the kid's like, "It's at that thing in the window," I don't go, "Dude, why?" I say, "Oh my gosh, you noticed where your attention was. That's awesome. That's a really hard skill. Like, way to go." Now, over time, as kids learn that, of course, I'm going to scaffold and my expectations change. But when we're learning at first, we really, really want to praise awareness. Um, and the thing that's really wonderful about awareness is not only is it building these really important skills, it also can build advocacy skills for these kids. I need a break between um, uh, coming home from school and doing homework because my attention, I immediately I'm noticing that it's really hard right now. We get better, these kids can get better at advocating, and we as providers or parents can get better at advocating for kids when we get more aware of attention. Um, so because we all have, it's the end of the day and we all have rough working memory. Teaching attention, again, you first want to define it, make it as concrete as possible, use reflexive questions, expect variability, praise self-awareness, and really work on that noticing without judgment. Notice this is information. We don't have to rate it as bad or good. And then how do we strengthen attention, right? So, unfortunately, the kryptonites of attention are stress, threat, and poor mood, which means, again, it's why I emphasize and I'm emphasizing awareness so much. These aren't going anywhere. We're not getting into an environment where our attention is going to be perfect. Um, Attention's always going to be this moving target. Um, and so that is why we have to first start with awareness, and then we can start um, building up these skills. Now, Dr. Jaw's research and others like Dr. Richard Dawson, what they have found is the single most effective way to build attention is mindfulness, specifically meditating to breath. Now, again, this is when you're focused. So, this is a kind of meditation where you're focusing on your breath. And when your mind wanders, which it will 100% do a lot, you gently bring it back to your breath. For kids, we might have to start with 5 breaths or 1 minute. We want to start a little bit farther than what feels comfortable, what they feel like they can do. Um, but this meditating, again, just focusing on your breathing, you're literally practicing the skill we want, which is focusing on pointing your flashlight in one direction, noticing when it goes somewhere, and bringing it back. Mindful walking can be another really wonderful thing to practice. And this is specifically kind of noticing going on walking where you're really paying attention to the present. How do your feet feel on the ground? What are the sounds in the air? We're in spring right now, which is 100% beautiful and somehow also 100% awful with all the pollen. But mindful walking can be a wonderful thing to do as a family. It can be a wonderful thing to do really quickly of just, again, getting engaged in the present. Body scan is another really wonderful thing that you can often find a lot of these online, like kind of a body scan your body. I'll with kids, I'll say we're going to take our flashlight and we're going to like zoom down our body, and so you're noticing things like, well, are your muscles tight? Are they loose? Is there anything hot or cold? Is anything tingly? Um, and again, there is in the handout, there is a link to an article that explains all of these in detail. And then the last one is something called open monitoring, where you're just where you take moments throughout the day or week to pay attention to your thoughts and emotions without judgment. So just noticing. So this is like noticing I'm having an emotion, I'm having a physical feeling without getting hooked, without letting it hook you. And all four of these can they don't you don't have to start with 20 minutes. Start small, start manageable. Um, but they are practicing awareness of your thoughts and emotions, noticing when they wander, and then gently bringing them back. And that's really the skill that we want strengthened in kids. And the thing about meditation, again, specifically this focusing on the breath meditation, yes, it improves attention, huzzah! But it also improves inhibition, which again is that pause. I will say the so much of behavior of what we think of as like behavior or a kid getting in trouble, so much of it is inhibition. It is a struggle between pausing between an impulse and an action. And so practicing things um, um, like being aware of your emotions without reacting to them, or just learning how to take deep breaths is going to, of course, help inhibition. Um, and then emotional regulation, all the practicing breathing, noticing how you're feeling and doing body scans, all of that, of course, is going to improve your emotional regulation because when kids are stressed or overwhelmed or silly or just have a case of the sillies, excited during any sort of dysregulation, usually they're not like, yes, I'd love to take some deep breaths. Like, thanks for making that recommendation, Fred. Um, because if we're not practicing, because they're not practicing it. But if you're practicing it every day, kids are going to learn that their breath is always somewhere they can return, and it's always there for them, and they're much more likely to be open to using it and practiced using it if you're doing it every day, as opposed to, oh my gosh, this kid is really dysregulated, let's see if they'll do deep breathing now. Generally no. um so um let's see, I'm done time. Okay. I'm gonna run through these last few. Multitasking. Stop trying to make multitasking happen. It's not a thing. It's not gonna happen. And again, it's not actually cognitively possible. When we think about our attention like a flashlight, it's not possible to multitask. And often I'll describe again multitasking to kids as like, this is like when we take our flashlight and go whoop, 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 whoop. So what's the alternative? Um, it oh, and I so the thing about multitasking, which may be obvious at this point, but when you spend a lot of your time task switching, which is what you're doing, is switching between task to task, evidence suggests you'll be slower, you make more mistakes, you're less creative, and you remember less of what you do. And if you think of any kids who are constantly switching, or even you as adults are switching, you can probably notice these things to be true. So what is the alternative? Is monotasking, right? You get more done when you do one thing at a time. Time blocking can be really great. We're going to try to monotask for 5 minutes, or we're going to try to monotask for 10 minutes. putting away screens and devices, because again, those can be very easy to pull your attention. Um, but what I really want to emphasize is monotasking can be practiced on anything. You The big thing is remembering to use the language. So you can say if a kid goes, "Hey, can I bring my phone to the table or my iPad to dinner?" We're going to practice monotasking as a family. We're going to monotask dinner, and we're just going to talk to each other. Monotask with a craft, going on a walk, making Shirley Temples. Like, it doesn't have to be schoolwork that we're working on monotasking with. It can be anything, and sometimes it can be really fun for kids to do something that they enjoy. Using plans, which again, I have linked in the handouts, but plans are a huge part of speech therapy. And the biggest thing that I want to emphasize about plans is it helps kids know exactly what to pay attention to. Plans are different than directions. Plans are specific, detailed instructions of what to do. These are a great way to monotask, and plans can be for anything, and you can use reflexive questions. Are you following the plan? Where's your flashlight? Where's your flashlight supposed to be right now? I've put a couple just silly plans that I use, but again, when I say for anything, I have a fidget plan. The kids know, because so then the kids know exactly what to do and not to do with fidgets. A plan for pausing. I have a little, because I do a lot of group therapy, I have a little pause card. And something simple like that can literally just get everybody calmer. Um, the next thing is taking breaks. I have a couple more slides, but I am almost done. Taking breaks has been shown to um, better learning overall. Barbara Oakley, if you want to learn more about kind of how important breaks are for learning, Barbara Oakley is a wonderful person to check out. Um, and I want to emphasize that breaks mean doing something that lets you pay attention in a different way. Screens are not a break. To your brain, screens are a task. They're another task. So I'm not here to tell you what to, this isn't like a screens, no screens thing, but it is important to remember that a screen is not a break for your brain. And one of the things that Dr. Jaw said is hypertasking, which is going from task to task to task to task to task, which a lot of us do right now, both as children do it and adults. Hypertasking is hypertaxing. It's taxing to your brain. And so we want to do, movement, like even laying your head on the desk and having the kids play 7 Up, taking a quick walk, moving around, coloring, something that just lets your brain pay attention differently. And then, of course, self-reflection, which I'm always going, is such an important part of any sort of learning. Um, so when you're doing some of these things, trying meditation, trying monotasking, talking about attention, what did you like doing? What were you good at? What was hard for you? What could you do differently next time? We want to build these in because um, as John Dewey said, as something that my mom says all the time, we do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. Again, John Dewey was somebody who wrote books in the early 1900s. So a lot of these concepts of self-reflection, of asking questions, of bringing kids into the learning process, these are not new ideas. And so just to wrap up this final review, because I know I've talked for a very long time, remember that attention is where your thoughts are pointing. Attention is like a flashlight. It can only point in one direction at a time. And your attention is fragile, trainable, and powerful. It is your superpower. It is your child's superpower. And I think that the more that we teach kids about attention, the more that they can feel in control of this superpower and understand what a superpower it is, because our attention does determine our life. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Lysandra. That was incredible. So much wonderful information. Just wonderful food for thought, but given to us in a really easily digestible way. Please feel free to unmute yourselves if you have any questions or type a thought or question in the chat box. We would love to hear from you. While you are pondering any questions you might have, as Lysandra said, there are some great resource documents that she's created for all of us. And as long as you were registered for tonight, which obviously you all were because you had the link to join, I will be sending out access that to everyone tomorrow, so you can start to dig into those resources. And I know that could spark other questions. Obviously, you see her contact information here and her website. But please, I will stop talking if anyone would like to have the floor. We're all just soaking it in.
It was like, my attention is done now. So
I know. I know. So thank you all for joining us. I know it's a Monday evening. Absolutely. Thank you all so much.
oh, someone did ask oh, you answered the question about the handout. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I promise I'll get that.
If nobody's asking a question, I'm going to ask, what is your recommendation for adults in meditation?
I would say the same like thing in terms of starting slow, starting small, but it has definitely been shown to be the single most effective way to strengthen your attention. I think honestly, I think as adults sometimes we get a little bit, it's easier for us to get uncomfortable quickly. I can't, I've never meditated, and I'm whatever age I'm at, so I just can't do it. And all I will say is I can do it, you can do it. I've been meditating the last 2 years because of this work. And I for sure know that my brain is not the easiest one to do it. Start really short, literally a minute or two, like, and remember that one thing I hear a lot, I hear over and over, I can't do it. Like, I can't do it. My mind keeps wandering. And I'm like, yes, that, it is not called, it's not called a perfect, it's called a practice. And I think that is something that I remember. It's not necessarily that it all of a sudden gets easier, but you certainly get more used to, like, oh, my brain is going to wander, um, and um, uh, and learning how to bring it back.
Getting lots of thank yous, and it was wonderful. Thank you for all the ideas. Yes, can't wait to share. Oh, with your students. Yay. Please report back to us.
Yeah, feel free. Even if you just want to, like I said, my contact information is there and also on the handout, but feel free to reach out. Even if you just want to like tell a story. I love hearing, it's one of my favorite things to teach kids. And I love hearing like what kids say, how people respond to it, how kids respond to it.
Absolutely. Yay, wonderful. Well, we're so excited. And as you even said to us, we just need to start, right? Start the conversation. We don't have to be perfect experts, right? To start to dig in and build that awareness, right? With our children or our students.
Yeah, I think and one of the reasons I mentioned is I myself got a little too focused on, I got to say the perfect language and I have to explain it in the perfect way and I have to, and like I said, most kids aren't going to get it at first. Some kids will, a lot of kids won't. A lot of kids will kind of get it. But the way that especially these abstract concepts get built is over time. So worry less about, I need to say the right language. There's several things linked in the handout that go into a lot of give detail about how to do this. It's really just that, even just starting to ask, where's your attention? Like, even if it's like, I'm not even sure, just instead of saying pay attention, ask, where's your attention? Where are your thoughts? Wonderful place to start.
Thank you all so much. Wishing you a great week ahead. Thank you again, Lysandra, for everything. And you'll be hearing from me tomorrow with access to those handouts. And reach out to us, to Lysandra, if you need any help, have any questions, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Emily. This was a lot of fun.
Yay, this was amazing. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye.